Hi everyone, this is the second episode of the Thelma Matilda Alves Foundation podcast. On this podcast today, I'm joined by Sabrina Allen, and we talk more about growing up with a parent with mental health issues and how this has impacted our experiences as a child and an adult. We also discuss the lack of feeling of belonging, racism in the UK, and how this has kind of shaped our feelings and made possible links to disparities in the mental health sector. I hope you enjoy today's episode.
So I just want to say thank you, Sabrina, for joining us on this episode and filling out the request form to kind of tell your story and share more with everybody. So if you just want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, anything of interest.
Yeah, so my name's Sabrina. I'm an entrepreneur and I've also started acting as well. So I currently run a business called Stash's Handmade Gifts. I've been running that for the past 6 years. So basically selling hand knitted cushions online. And then I'm starting a new business as well, which I'll be launching in July. So I'll be selling handmade haircare, skincare and aroma products containing natural and organic ingredients. So I'm just working on that right now. And yes, I'm also, I guess I can call myself an actress. I started acting 7 months ago. So I take acting classes and do auditions.
That sounds amazing. I really love that. So you said you wanted to talk more about your own mental health experiences.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to kind of open up to you to start wherever you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I was really interested in doing this because so I'm also a mum. I have a daughter who's 4.5 years old, and having my daughter has really helped me to work on my healing journey. I always kind of say that having my daughter was like having a second birthday, so it was kind of like a rebirth in a way. And so I think with me, like, because my own mother had mental health issues and she was very open with her mental health as well. And I think that she didn't really realize the effects that had on me, because she was a single mother and then I was also an only child. So there wasn't really any other external familial support. So I guess as a child, I kind of soaked a lot of that up unconsciously. And then I think it was only, I would say, like, when I got to like 16 years old, that was kind of when I started to notice, like, I felt quite like down with my mood. And yeah, like, it's just kind of been kind of just up and down from there. So like when I had my own daughter, because I struggle with my own mental health, I'm very conscious not to kind of project that onto her, because children soak up whatever's going on in their environment. So I think unconsciously, like, I knew that I really had to work on myself. And it's still a work in progress. Like, I'm so much better now than I used to be, but I also know that I have such a long way to go. And I always kind of say it's a full-time job as well, like maintaining your mental health, because there's literally so many things that I have to do, like, just to get myself to, like, I try and be like a 5 with my mood, but there's literally so many things that I have to do. Like, I have to, like, eat right, have to do my workouts like 5 times a week, and then I do yoga every night before bed, and like all of these things, like, it's so time consuming, but I literally have to do those things just to keep myself at a 5, because if I didn't work out, then like the chemicals in my brain, like my serotonin levels are just very, very low. And they've just been low for like so long, like I said, like since I was 16. So like I have to do the exercise just to get my serotonin levels at like a kind of regular state, and then get my endorphins up. dopamine, all of those things, just to try and get them at like a somewhat regular level. So yeah, it's just a lot, but I have to do those things. But then also it's made me more of a balanced person as well. And then it means that I can be a healthier version of myself for my daughter, because I don't want her to see me and be like, oh, my mum's unhappy. And then I don't want her to think that it's her fault, because that's what happened with me growing up. Like, my mum was just unhappy. And then because that mood, that energy level was always in the house. And then I always felt like that was my fault. So like growing up in that environment, and then as an adult, and kind of always having to tread on eggshells as well, because I didn't want to like, I guess, tick my mum off or like send her over the edge type of thing. I was very aware of that as a child. So I was always like treading on eggshells. And then as a child, I was very withdrawn. And then that kind of led to things like low self-esteem, low confidence, which I still struggle with as an adult. So this is why I always say, like, it's a work in progress. And the healing journey is very, very, very long. So I try and just be patient with myself and just try and remind myself that there's no timeline for healing. Because I think we live in a society where it's like, if you have mental health issues, oh, just have your 12 weeks of therapy and you'll be fine. But it's not like that. So I really have to remind myself, like, I've had so much therapy, like I've had CBT and like this, that, and the other. I've had so many, like, countless amounts of therapists. But I'll have therapy again at some point, and I have to remind myself that that's okay, because we live in a society where it's like, oh, just have your counselling and you'll be fine. And I have to say to myself, but I'm still healing, because the wounds are very, very, very deep. And I feel like this is what doesn't really get discussed, like generational trauma. It doesn't get discussed. Like, my mum has trauma. Her mum had trauma, and before that, it just gets passed down from generations. So for me, I want it to stop with me. Like, I don't want to pass that on to my daughter. She might pick up like certain things, because I don't think it's possible for me to hide it 100%. And I also don't think it's healthy to hide it 100% as well. Like, I still need to be me. So she might have mental health issues as well, but at least I've been through that myself, so at least I can help her with her healing journey as well.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I think one thing you said was generational trauma. I think for the Black community, that is such a prevalent thing of kind of not really witnessing our parents go through things, dealing with things, and then either you're privy to an adult conversation, you get hurt, you hear the information, and then you take on that, and then you're like, oh, my parents are like this because of this. Like, I can very much speak to having a parent that has undiagnosed mental health issues. Like, my dad had a really traumatic childhood, and I think he will deny it till kingdom comes. That it very much shaped the way he did things, and it shaped our relationship. And I dealt with a lot of like issues growing up, because I was like dealing with this person at home who couldn't even recognize that their behavior was so toxic to everybody else in the house. And as I got older, I was able to afford counselling. Obviously, as you said, counselling comes with a lot of inner work that you have to do. You can't just go and sit in a room for an hour and talk to someone and walk out and be like, oh, I'm fixed, it's no problem. Like, you have so much. Like, I had to go away and have these conversations with my dad and try and come to a compromise about where I was with my dad, to be like, okay, I can deal with this, I can't deal with that. But even then, I kind of like spot behaviors that I have, like about money insecurities, because of things that my dad put me and my mom pulling through. And for him, he thought those behaviors were acceptable, and I understand that from his perspective. But to me now, it causes me a lot of anxiety. So I have a lot of anxiety around money. I have a lot of anxieties around like confrontation. So all those things, and I'm like, it's so weird, and I'm trying to work on them, because I don't have kids yet, but I want to have kids, and I'm always like, how do I make sure I pass on things like money anxiety on to my kids? Like, I don't want them to live with that everlasting burden over their head. And it's a very hard thing, but I think what we're doing, kind of talking about it and kind of being honest with ourselves about sort of those traumas is even a start. I feel like even if I don't kind of like heal all the wounds, at least acknowledging it is a step forward, and then hopefully my kids can go even further than I'm able to go to undo some of that.
I think like the wounds are so deep, like I do get worried that I'll never be able to fully heal them, and I think unfortunately like that's something that I'll have to accept. Like there'll always be like some level of pain there, but I'm just trying to get myself to the best possible place that I can get to. But I think that that's really amazing that you can have conversations with your dad, because with my mum, like I can't have those conversations with her because she shuts it down like real quick. Like she'll shut it down, like you say, like just deny it till kingdom come. Like she'll just deny everything, like because she doesn't realize that she has trauma, because her trauma is so traumatic. She literally cannot even talk about it because that's too painful for her to talk about. Whereas I'm the opposite, like because I had to keep it in for so long, I actually find it healing just talking about it, like even just talking about it now, like and just to get it off my chest that feels healing to me. Like this is why, because I had therapy last year, and for me it was just so nice to just pour everything out. And I think I would like to just be in therapy every week, if I'm honest, just to let it all out. Because it just, I feel like keeping it in it's so like stifling and exhausting. But it's really amazing that you're able to move forward with your dad and have those conversations, because I can't have those with my mum. So I kind of have, because I have a daughter, I have to keep in contact with her because I don't want to deprive my child as a grandma. And my mum's grandma style is very different to her mum's style, because her grandma's style is very like caring and she's always buying things for my daughter. But then she wasn't like that with me growing up. But I've had to just kind of accept that the grandma side of her is different to the mum side of her. So I actually don't really see her as my mum. I see her as my child's grandma. So I've also kind of had to kind of grieve that relationship with her, because I used to have this thing of, I wish my mum did this and I wish she would hug me and tell me she loved me and da-da-da-da-da. But like, that's not going to happen. But she doesn't really say I love you to my daughter either, because she just doesn't have that in her where she can say those words. Like I feel very lucky that I can tell my daughter I love you. I can tell her like 50, 100 times a day, because my love for her, it pours out of me. But because my mum doesn't have that, like she can't say I love you, which is very, very sad. So I'm so happy for my daughter, because she has a mum and a dad who can openly say, I love you, like despite my issues, and her dad who also has his own my daughter's dad who also has his own struggles. We are both able to say, I love you to our child, because we love her. I think for me, it's really baffling how a parent can't say that to their child. That's just something I'll never understand, but like there's no answers for that. But yeah, it's really amazing that you can have those conversations with your dad and you're able to move your relationship forward in a healthy way.
Yeah, I think for what kind of saved my dad's relationship was actually, mine and my dad's relationship was when he got divorced with my mum. Having that separation from him, I kind of just was able to work out what bits about my dad's behavior could I compromise and deal with. So I think that he's not as like, he's very much more hard. So for him, it was always like, you've got to work hard and do hard things. I think I get my drive from kind of dealing with that situation, because I had incidents when I was younger that my mom didn't really have the patience for things with, like, when I was learning to, like, spell and always have things at primary school. My mom never had the patience to deal with that. My dad was always the one that picked up the slack. So it's kind of like recognizing the small things that he did for me that kind of like, okay, those small things were helpful. Obviously, we have bigger issues of money anxieties and all these things, and me feeling like I could never really approach it about certain things. But I kind of feel like now I'm able to compromise. I kind of know where I sit with my dad. Like, I'm like, not everything I will go to my dad about. If I'm more emotional, I turn to my mom. And if it's more practical, productive things, I'm very much like, Dad, I need advice about this career step. What's that? Because he's very, like, logical in that brain, and that's the things that I go to him for. Or I'm like, I'm looking at this car, what do you think? Those are things that I put my dad about. I don't really have the emotional side. So it's kind of like, it's weird because my mom compensates so much for that emotional, because she is kind of a more emotional parent. That's her style. That was her style with my brother, and that's her style with my niece and nephew. So she's that person you just go to and have these conversations about. She's really worked on herself in the past couple of years after their divorce to be very much more open with me about how she's feeling, what she's dealing with. And I really respect that, because I think it makes me feel so much more, like, it normalizes that connection. I think my niece sees it, my nephew sees it. It's like normalizing that. My brother's kind of, I don't know, I think it's just been like my mum's has kind of helped to shape us even in our adulthood. So I think with my dad, it's kind of just meeting him where he's at. And it's taken a lot of work, like I say to people, time, like having a parent that's kind of difficult to deal with and to connect with is a very hard thing. And sometimes I'm like, you just got to meet them where it's at. Sometimes I won't talk to him for 4 weeks because that's just the relationship we have. Sometimes I'm just like, it's been 4 weeks I haven't spoken to my dad, but my dad also doesn't have that register of being like, I should text my daughter to see how she's doing, because for him, if I'm dead, you're not dead. So that's how it rolls. Like, so I remember I used to go out as a teenager and my mum would be in the way in Jamaica or something, and he'd be like, my mum would be like, can you text Ryan to see where she is? And he's like, no, she's an adult, so if she's in the court with the police haven't called my door, then she's not dead. That's my dad. That is very much my dad, and I just have to meet him where he's at, because it's for me to accept that that's him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
That's so funny.
So that is exactly how it's like, and some people are like, oh.
Yeah.
Contrasting, my mum's so more overconfident. Mum will be like, are you okay? Where are you? What are you doing today? My dad will be like, oh, I haven't heard from you for 4 weeks. What's your life been like?
Yeah.
So it's just very just knowing where I can go for what I need with my parents is very helpful.
Yeah, that's really beautiful that all of you have been able to grow. Like, that's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
And that must be really healing as well for all of you.
So yeah, I think it has been healing. I think it's kind of, at the same time, I kind of feel sad for for me growing up, because I could never quite place what I wanted to do. It kind of felt unscapable. And I always just had these dreams when I lived with my parents about like running away and doing all these like crazy things. I didn't love my home life, and I felt very isolated because my friends would be like, oh, come over, and I'd be like, never invite anyone over to my house. And I still do now, like, I'm still like, oh, no one's coming to my house, but it's just a very much childhood informed situation of me being like, I never invite people. My dynamic with my parents were very iffy. You could my dad was in the mood, he was not approachable. So yeah, it's just that type of thing. So I'm like, I'm aware, and I'm still trying to unlearn things and like, okay, that's because of this. I should invite people around, or those type of things where I need to kind of let go of my worries about money and financial issues, because again, that is trauma informed. So it's kind of, I think it's a process. Like, as you said, you don't just go to counselling and wake up one day and you're like, oh, everything's over. You still continuously have to keep checking yourself and being like, I need to stop doing that, or to be reined in, and working from that. But I also had a question about your mum. Was it ever diagnosed, or was it like an undiagnosed mental health issue that she was dealing with?
No, she has been diagnosed with depression, but I think one of the issues is like she used that term like so much, so I just soaked it up. Like she was just constantly saying it, and yeah, I think as a child, like it's really, really unhealthy, like being in that environment. And I think going back to what you were saying about how, like you feel sad for how you were as a child. I have that as well. Like I feel sad for myself because I just feel like a child deserves to be a child. Like they deserve to have their innocence. And I had that thing as well. Like I would go over to other people's houses and like everything was so like sunny and happy, nice house. Everybody had a car. Everybody was smiling. Sabrina, do you want a Ribena? Do you want an ice lolly? Do you want a biscuit? Like it was just so nice. And like, I just didn't have that at home. So that's when I was like, yeah, it's a bit different over here. Like, it's very, very different over here. So like going to other people's houses, like that's why I always had this like 2.4 children, like nuclear family thing in my head, because like those environments just seemed so nice, and then always seeing that on TV. And yeah, I guess one of the things that I find it very difficult to get over is what would I be like today? Like, what would I have achieved if I'd grown up in a like fluffy, nice, happy, loving family environment? But yeah, so I think that's the thing that will take me the longest to get over, because that's not my fault, that's not how I was raised, and it is what it is. But that is the thing that like cuts the most, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely have that dream of wanting to like, what's my life going to be like when I'm an adult? I'm going to make sure I never do any of this. And in this situation, I never put my children through that, and that was something I definitely had. But I also think like your thing about what would I be if I grew up in a family that was different. I'm also like, I don't think I would be me now. Like, I don't think I would be doing the work that I do. I don't think I would have set up a charity, because I would have never had those experiences to kind of confront the lived experience I had to go through to be here. And while I don't think that like is like, oh, okay, well, you need to go through trauma to be anywhere, I'm always like, I feel like dealing with those things really were like what made me make choices to be where I am, or develop my personality. So like, I'm very stubborn. My mom's always like, if I have something that I'm doing in my head and I say I'm doing something, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's very much because of me, the environment I was in when I was growing up. Of like, I was always trying to find a way to like better myself to get out. So I'm always like, I have to do this now because it will get me to where I need to be. So that happiness that I want for myself.
Yeah.
Things like that, I'm always like, I wouldn't have maybe the same drive. I didn't have that environment growing up. So I'm always kind of like checking in, like what positive stances they would have from being having a lived experience that I did.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, because I'm definitely a perfectionist. Like I always want to get things right, and I always want to complete things as well. So like, and I had that growing up, like with my schoolwork, I always wanted to get A's, like always wanted to get A's. That's what I was always striving for, because I had this notion in my head that if I get my A's, I'm going to have a happy life. And I know like that's not how it goes, but I think because there is this narrative of if you get your good grades and you go to university and you get a good job and then you can buy a nice house and you'll be happy. But obviously things don't work out that way. But having like from a very early age, having that thing of, I need to get out and I need to be happy, because I don't want to end up, no disrespect to my mum, but I don't want to end up like her. Like I don't want to be unhappy, but it doesn't work out that way, because if you're in that environment, you just soak it up. And then one day you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, I'm not happy. And my mood is low, and like, what's all this about? And then it just takes years of unraveling and just putting all the pieces together and trying to work out who you are.
Absolutely. And I think as like you deal with that as a child and a teenager, it's so hard to kind of pinpoint, because you're going through like developmental things as well. So like dealing with your mental health and kind of pinpointing a mental health issue is so odd. I feel like that for me, that was like a really weird thing that I had before. I was like, oh, a teenager. I feel sad, but I'm not. Am I sad because of hormones? Or am I sad because like this environment's making me sad? And work through that and explain it as well, because I feel like I always say to myself, now the one thing I wish I had when I was younger was the vocabulary that I have now to articulate myself out and where I'm at. And I never had that as a teenager. I always thought I struggled to be like, this is what's bothering me. Like I would just harbour so much or try and make myself feel happy in various ways. Like I was always at work as a teenager. That was my massive thing. So it was my like first part-time job. I was like, I'm at work. And many hours you can throw at me, I will be there, because I was like, A, I don't want to be at home, and B, money to go and do things outside of my house that I can enjoy. And even now I'm always saying to myself, like, I have the need to escape my own home now, even though I love my home and I'm not with my parents and I'm not in my family home. I'm like, I like outside so much more. Wow. And I think that is very like childhood trauma informed, because I'm like, oh, but I could go here and I could do this and I'll go to a museum and I'll walk around here and I want to go there and da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a homebody and I don't know what that's about.
Wow. Okay, I'm actually the opposite. I'm a homebody to the point where I'm almost a recluse. Like if I didn't have my child, like because my daughter, she goes to nursery now, so I have to pick her up. If I didn't have her, I think I would literally just be at home 24/7, because I have, because like growing up with my mum, I didn't like being in the house either. So like so I moved out when I was 20. So I just like being at home because it's mine and I can be myself. I don't have to tread on eggshells. And I think it just feels secure. Like when I go out into the outside world, like I don't know what's going to be there. Mm-hmm. So for me, like my house is my security blanket. So yeah, that's really interesting how it's like the same situation where we both didn't like being at home, but you still have that, like you just want to get out of the house. And I'm like, I just want to stay at home. So I loved lockdown. Like the government was like, stay at home. And I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to the government this time. Like, I'm going to stay at home. Like, this is perfect. So, yeah.
That must have been that for me. I was like, I need to go outside. I'm one of those people that really like the commute. Like, now I work from home, so now I can't even imagine going. My body's like habit routine. I'm at home, I wake up and I go to the gym and I come back and I turn on my laptop and work. But before lockdown, I was commuting into like central London for work, and I really loved the commute. And I'm always like one of those people who are like, "Oh, I love to commute." Why? Like it's 6 a.m. when I get on the train, I'm like, "Yeah, I loved it." But again, I think it was that thing of just being outside of the house. Like I was right. So I know for myself that I really struggle on weekends when I don't have plans to be anywhere, because it really like bothers me to be at home, even though I like my house, and I'm like, oh, I love this space that I have, and I'm happy that I've got it. But I'm always like, oh, but I don't have plans, and the fact that I don't have plans kind of make me itch. So I'll like get in my car and drive like B&M. So it's so odd because I think that lockdown, and I'm like, the first 2 weeks are great because I was like, okay, I don't have to go anywhere, like it's a rest time. And then after that, it completely just felt like hell. I was like, I just need to go somewhere. I need to
God.
I don't care what it is. I just need to be outside.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's really interesting how like the same situation can manifest itself in different ways, I guess.
Yeah, I think that is the thing with mental health, is like you can have so many shared similarities with somebody's like situation in terms of parents or traumas you've gone through, experience you've gone through, but your behavior will be so different, like just because of personality or things that you did or things that you found comfort in. Like I found a lot of comfort of being outside and planning things and having friends that were like, oh, let's go here, and I was like, yes, okay, great, I'm outside. And my mom always says to me as a teenager, she's like, why are you outside again? And I was like, because I just need to be outside. Like for me, I found so much comfort in that. So I think that's kind of it maintained its way through my adulthood of me just being like, I like to be busy. I like to I like to go and explore, like, oh, I'm the type of person who'll be like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm walking around London, going to a market by myself, because I will just naturally feel like the itch of staying inside no, I can't do that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, and my partner's actually like that. Like, he works from home, but like when our daughter's gone to bed, he's like, I'm going for a walk, I need to go outside, and I'm like, okay. So yeah, that's really interesting. I guess I don't know, I think that sounds healthier, what you're doing, like being outside. I think my way is not healthy. And I think, yeah, luckily I have my daughter, so I do actually get out, and then like doing acting classes once a week, like I get my social vitamins from that. So yeah, I have kind of noticed that I wasn't getting enough social vitamins before, like from just always being at home, because this is kind of like my default mode. Like, especially like when I'm feeling down, I just want to be at home. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody, because I'm just exhausted. And then I don't want to go outside. And then after that, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. And then it's like, no, not fine. Because again, like, we live in a society where you have to say you're fine. Like, you can't be like, no, like I feel really, really crap. I feel low. I don't feel happy. Don't know where I'm going in life. Don't know what I'm doing. Like, you can't say that. So you have to just say you're fine. But that in itself is incredibly exhausting. So, yeah, I think that for me is probably the reason why I just like being at home, because I can just be me, and I can just be in my feelings. And that's kind of, acknowledging my feelings helps me in my healing journey as well, because I think growing up I wasn't allowed to express. I think you mentioned this before as well, like you now have the vocabulary to say how you feel, but you didn't have that when you were younger. And that's the same with me. And I kind of, maybe sounds a little bit crazy, but I kind of like have to talk to myself internally to kind of like rationalize how I'm feeling, but also acknowledge how I'm feeling as well, because I didn't have that growing up. Like, I couldn't talk to my mum and be like, I'm feeling this way, because my feelings were always dismissed, which is not very healthy. And one of the amazing things with my child, even though she's only 4, because we're very open in the house, like about our feelings, she's able to articulate how she feels as well. So she's very self-reflective, and she kind of like acknowledges her achievements, or if she's like angry about something, like she'll say that she's angry, or like if she's really angry, she's screaming. Like, when she's calmed down, she'll kind of explain that, oh, I was angry because X, Y, and Z reasons. So I think that that's really beautiful and amazing that she's able to articulate how she feels, and I'm hoping that she continues to do that, and then she won't necessarily struggle in the same way that I did.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So like emotionally intelligent of her as well. That's like a young age to be able to be like, I'm upset because of this. So I don't think that was anything that I did as a kid. Like, I always felt like I was either just very like neutral about everything. Or like my mum would say, oh, you're a happy baby. But I always feel like as I got to a child, I was very like neutral about things. Just because, again, I grew up in a predominantly white area, racism and stuff, and then I just didn't know how to deal with that. So when I told my mum, obviously would get angry and I didn't go to the school and pull them up. But for me, like, I just learned to kind of be non-responsive to those type of things until I got older. I definitely think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'm like super. I do a lot of like work around race and racism, because I think I was so silent in those like childhood, early teen years. I'm now like, I have to be vocal. I need to be expressive. I need to talk about it. But I think when going back to something you said about like you found your social meeting, like the funniest thing about that is I resonate with that, because a lot of the times I will go outside but I'm alone. So unless my friends like will make explicit plans with me to do something, I'm very much like, I will do that by myself. And because again, as you said, to express to someone how you feel or where you're at right at that point is tiring, and you don't want to kind of emotionally like dump all your stuff onto them. So there's that. And then there's also the thing that sometimes I feel like people's responses what you say can just feel so invalidating and so inadequate that you just want to hold it to yourself. And that, I feel like I had this massive thing recently about people needing to learn how to be friends, because I think people prioritize a lot of their like romantic relationships and how to be like a great partner. But I'm also like, you need to learn how to be a great friend too, because if your friend is suffering and you're sitting there and you're telling me you didn't know that, or your friend didn't feel comfortable coming to you, then I don't think you're a good friend. So there's these things that I'm with it. Maybe we need to learn how to have conversations with people about where they're at too, so people don't feel so isolated and lonely. They feel like they can't come out and be like, oh, I don't feel great, here's why. So I think that's something that society needs to work on in general.
That's a really good point. So you're going back to saying how you spend a lot of time on your own. I actually think that that's really, really healthy, because I feel like we live in a society where we live in a society that celebrates, oh, you've got 50 million friends, that's so amazing, you must do everything with your friends. But actually, no, it's okay. Like, I really have to say to myself, like, if I want to go to a museum by myself, if I want to go to the cinema by myself, that's okay. Because we live in a society where, like, you look like you're weird or you're a loner if you're doing something by yourself. But it's actually beautiful to be able to go out by yourself, because it means that you're comfortable in your own skin, you're comfortable with your own company. And that's a really healthy, mature thing. And going back to what you were saying about loneliness, like, we just had mental health week last week, and the theme was loneliness. But I feel like there's always this conversation online about mental health, but I feel like it really doesn't happen in person. Like, it really, really doesn't. And it's so frustrating. And there's so many people online that are just so lonely. And it's so sad. And I don't know what the cure is for that, but it's definitely being more open in person. But society doesn't allow that. I'd love to just sit and be like, I feel incredibly crap because X, Y, and Z things have happened, and it's knocked my confidence. Like, there's been things that have happened this year, like I'm trying to set up a business. I'm a solo entrepreneur, so it's just been really, really difficult. And then people have said, oh, I want to do this with you, I want to do this, and just not coming through. Like, that's knocked my confidence so much and had an effect on my self-esteem. But that's why I'm feeling crappy. But I can't say that to anybody. I just have to be like, oh, because we live in a society that really respects resilience. Like, oh, you need to be resilient and you need to be strong. And, oh, doesn't matter if this person rejected you. But rejection is psychological, and it has an effect on somebody psychologically. Like, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like, there's one of the levels which is love and belonging. So if you're rejected, you can't actually make it to the top of the pyramid, which is self-actualization, because you don't feel like you belong anywhere. So this is why a lot of people feel stuck, because they don't have the right set of circumstances. They don't have the right people around them. And you can be in a room full of people and feel lonely. And this is why I like being at home, because I can just breathe and I can just be myself. I don't like being around loads of people who don't really care about, like, me and who I am as a person and what I'm doing, because that feels really lonely. I'd actually rather be by myself.
Absolutely. I think I kind of got to the discovery that the reason why I like to do a lot of things alone is because it feels like I felt that I needed validation from other people to do things, and that stopped me from doing a lot of things that I wanted to do and see and go and do. So that was one issue. But I also noticed the fact that you could be around a lot of people. I could say I have friends and I can be like, my friends are loving, they're great. But sometimes ultimately I can be around my friends and feel ultimately very lonely. Like, I had this conversation with my mum a couple of months ago that I said to her, sometimes I feel like I'm alone, even though I'm very aware that I have a loving family, I have a lot of friends, I have support systems and everything. But that loneliness that you can feel inside, just something can creep up to the surface a lot of the times. Her resolving that, it just feels very odd, because it's not something I feel like I can pinpoint. A lot of it is the society we live in, the lack of ability to community build, to find people who share very similar experiences to you. Because as my friends, like, we connect, but I sometimes feel like they don't exactly know how I'm feeling at the time, or can attest to a lot of my shared experiences. One of the reasons why I started a charity was because I live in a predominantly white area, so a lot of my friends are predominantly white. And a lot of the times when I'm trying to explain how I feel as a Black woman, it's very hard because they will get it and they'll be like, yeah, I can see it. But for me, I'm like, but you don't feel how I feel. Like, I feel an internal pain that I'm having to feel this situation because of the color of my skin and then second or my gender. And it can only resonate on that, on the level of my gender. Or say things and I'll be like, great, but the way you've seen me and the way the rest of society sees me is two completely different things. A lack of awareness sometimes, I'm like, can feel sometimes very lonely and isolating. So I'm always like, the lack of ability to kind of community build in these areas, I think is puzzling. And it's something that I'm trying to like get like I have my niece now and I'm like, okay, she's kind of in the same similar situation as me where most of her friends are white and whatever. And it's just the area we live in. So I'm like, there's nothing we can do. But I'm very much trying to enforce in her things like love your hair, you straighten your hair, things like that, and try and take her up like to see different things where there are women and Black girls around. And she has our family, obviously, but I'm like trying to be confident in who you are. Because a lot of the times when you get older, these friends are not going to be able to resonate to your lived experiences, and that can feel very isolating, and that can feel very lonely, and the ability to build community is very, very hard. Especially when you're coming in with, oh, I come from a predominantly white area, oh, you come from a posh area. It's like, I do, but like it's very wild to be in a posh area and be Black, honestly. Sometimes even like I was sitting in the pub the other day and I was talking about the fact that I wanted to maybe consider moving to Portugal, and this old white couple behind me were like listening to me talk about why I didn't love this country so much about in terms of the racism and structural oppression, and they like disgruntled that this Black girl had come into the room and decided to tell them what's like, and I wasn't directly being like, your country's awful. I was just like, there's issues here that I don't like and I don't want to deal with. And I like, if I move somewhere else, I can deal with something new. And just those things. And my friends on the table, one of them was like, oh, maybe we should talk about this. And I was like, okay, get it. But again, you're not seeing my side of it. This is a painful thing. Like for me to be like, I have to leave a country my grandparents came to and had to work really hard to be here and consider things because all of this structural oppression is too much for me. It's wild and it's kind of painful. But again, I realize they're not going to be able to connect with that because we don't have those racial connections. I can feel lonely. Like basically I kind of just ended up being able to kind of think about it and think to my mum, like, sometimes it does feel lonely. I am the only Black girl in a lot of these spaces and I don't enjoy it. And it's a lot of tiring and it's a lot of policing my own behaviour, policing my tone, not really saying what I want to say to people in situations because I'm like, I don't want to be the one who's defense Blackness of being like, well, what you said there was slightly racist. Like I don't want to do that a lot of the time. So I find myself policing. It just feels like I'm not living to my self. And they're startling, and I feel like a lot of people kind of deal with things where they're not able to really truly be themselves, kind of make you feel lonely because you feel like you're living a part of a lie a lot of times. And I feel like that's one thing I noticed about loneliness, and I was kind of reading the Mental Health Foundation's like take on loneliness, so I'm like, a lot of this is missing racial and cultural context of a lot of times. Some of the spaces you feel very lonely in because you're the only Black person in the room, or everyone in the room sing along to a rap song and they're saying the N-word, and you don't want to be the one to sit there and be like, this is weird, I don't like it. But then now you're the one who's causing the issue. You're always bringing up race. Like these things can make you feel lonely. So I don't know, like a lot of times I'm like, there's so many layers to loneliness that I feel like I don't know whether it's going to be a feeling that's ever kind of overcome.
Literally everything you've just said, I've just been nodding along, because that is exactly how I feel. Like I do not like living here, and that feeling, I think that feeling has gotten worse since Brexit. So like 2016, that result devastated me so much, because the campaign very much felt like an anti-immigration campaign. And even though, and everybody was like, oh, but yeah, just because you vote Brexit doesn't mean you're racist. I'm like, okay, but that's how it felt. That's just how it felt, because like people can dress it up how they want. It felt like an anti-immigration campaign. That's how it felt. I'm very lucky, because no one's ever said to me, go back home. Like, I've literally never had anybody say that to me. And I do live in a predominantly white area. But I know that happened a lot, like particularly following the Brexit vote. But I feel like the past 6 years, this country has become more and more right-wing, and more not liking non-white people, shall I say. And yeah, I really, really feel it. Like, I've always felt it unconsciously, but now I just see it consciously. Like, it's just very, very, very obvious. And then in 2018, like the Windrush scandal, that really, really scared me, because I'm second generation. So like, my mum moved over when she was 10. So she moved over in, I think, 1965, she moved over. And then my grandma moved over a little bit before then. So that's really scary to me, because I have a British passport. My mum has a British passport, but then like second generation people were being deported as well. And I'm like, yeah, but how can you like be born in the UK and then be deported? And like, I still keep seeing stories of it happening now. Like, people just being stripped of their citizenship. Like that, it's nonsensical to me. I don't understand it, don't know why it's happening. But so for this past 4 years, I've had this unsettling feeling, like I've like raised here, like being born here, raised here, but I don't even really feel British anymore, because there's just so many things that the government are doing. And yeah, like, it's just really unsettling. So this doesn't even really feel like my country. I just feel like I live here, but I have this thing where I just want to escape. And then I've always keep having these thoughts of like, my grandma came here, like, why did she come here? Like, why didn't she go to America? Because I see Black Americans, and like, I know that racism exists in America as well, but I feel like the conversation is more open in America. I feel like it's not really that open over here. I feel like when George Floyd died, the conversation opened up a little bit, but it's very kind of surface level. But I feel like in America, like, because there's there's a slavery history there, even though like Britain had their hand in it as well, but that doesn't get talked about. But no one can deny that slavery happened in America for like 400 years. Like, no one can deny that. So that conversation is very, very open. And I think the world agrees that America is racist. Like, the world agrees on that. There's a disagreement that Britain is racist. Like, nobody wants to have that discussion. Nobody wants to admit that. And I just feel like if I had like lived in America, like, I could be a Black woman and I could thrive, and I don't feel like I can thrive over here. Like you were saying earlier, you feel like you always have to police your emotions. I always feel that way as well. I always feel like, because I'm normally just in white spaces, so I feel like I can't even mention being Black. Like, I just can't mention anything at all. Like, I was watching a psychology video yesterday that had been recommended by my acting class, and then it was a really amazing video, but then 17 minutes into it, because this study was on Americans, and the person doing the video was like, oh yeah, well, this is based on Americans, but there are other countries that aren't as developed, like China, India, and Africa. And I'm like, so you're saying that non-white countries are not as developed, but obviously a white person watching that video would not see anything wrong with that. But why is he say, like, how is China and India and Africa not as developed? Based on what? because he watched an advert and there was like a black kid in Africa. Like they always show black children in Africa, like looking really skinny with like flies buzzing around. And like, that's the image that we always see. Or like we see like an Indian, like barefoot. And I'm just like, oh, like we see like a Chinese person eating a dog or whatever. And it's just like, so there's all of these narratives that are Western narratives that aren't the truth. And then he just said it in like a flippant statement. But I'm just like, because I'm black, I just clocked that. And I'm like, what do you mean? So it's just these things. And then I can't talk about that to a white person. But that video just really frustrated me. So it's little things like that where I'm always having to like rationalize my thoughts. Like there are things that annoy me, but I can't speak on them because I'm always in white environments. And yeah, it's very, very, very stifling and it's very frustrating. Like even just living in a white area, it's so exhausting, like even leaving the house because I just get stared at. And like trying to explain to people, I get stared at when I leave the house. I get dirty looks when I leave the house. I get, why are you living here looks when I leave the house. But I can't explain that to anybody because I sound like I'm crazy. But I know that I'm getting those looks because I get them. Oh, but they're not looking at you. Like they're just getting on with their lives. They're really not. They are really looking at me and talking about me. And like it takes so much strength to even leave the house. Like when you live in a hostile environment, especially where I live, because where I live, the houses were built in the 1950s. And nobody has left the area. So it's very, very 1950s where I live. It's a very 1950s mentality. And I like really, really felt it when I moved into this neighborhood as well. So yeah, it's hard to thrive. Like it's incredibly hard to thrive. And even like with acting classes, I find it really hard because it's even though like there's a couple of black people, there's a couple of Asian people, but I'm still so conscious that it's a white room and I can't 100% relax because I'm like, oh, I can't say this because of this and I can't say this and I can't say this and I can't say this because I guess I've always had to police what I'm saying. And I think you mentioned before about when you were a child and like growing up and then like hearing racist things and then your mum would have to like go to the school. I think you said that. Yeah. I kind of had those things as well. And I didn't really understand them at the time. And like my mum would like go to the school like raging angry. And my mum, like her rage is rage. Like her rage is something else. And I'd be like, oh my God, like my mum is such an angry person. And like I just didn't understand it. And then like everybody would laugh like she's crazy. So yeah, I didn't really understand those things like until like now I'm an adult. And then I have that worry for my daughter as well because we live in a predominantly white area. But what I've actually managed to do is that she's starting school in September. So the school that I'm sending her to, it's out of the area and it's in an area where it's a bit more of a mixture of like white, black, mixed race and Asian people. So I feel like that'll be healthier for her. So that's kind of how I'm going to combat it. And then I'm going to send her to Black Saturday School when she's 6 years old. So I feel like there's just little things that I'm trying to do, but yeah, it's really stifling, like really, really stifling.
And I think it contributes to such the wide-scale disparity in Black mental health in the countries. Like you see the statistics of Black people more likely to suffer from anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, all of these things. And I'm like, if we're taking basic psychology, Maslow's like hierarchy of needs and saying that you need to feel love and belonging, it is hard to feel belonging in a country where they're always trying to test your citizenship, your right to be here. You're always questioning, like there's always this question looming over your head about, should I be here? Should I not be? Should I enter this area? Should I enter this shop? Should I enter this club? Should I enter this bar? And for me, I always say to people don't realize how big and consuming whiteness is. So if a white person that enters an all black space, let's say a white person goes into an all black church or an all like a nightclub that's predominantly black and plays black and Asian music, that one white person can throw off the whole situation for all the ethnic minorities in the room. And they don't get that. And I'm like, it works the same way when an Asian or a black person enters a predominantly white space. It's power dynamic is completely off because whiteness is like overruled over any other race. So for me, I'm like, people, they were like, oh, but I feel uncomfortable entering an all black club. But I'm like, you feel uncomfortable because you know you have the power over the whole situation to be like, why is this whole club white? And you can go on Twitter and write a whole thread about this whole club being black and you're going to get the agreement of all of these racist white people in the country and all these newspapers that agree with you that are going to rile it up and be like, this shouldn't be the situation, da 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 da. And that's the power of your whiteness. But I, as a black person, can be like, why is this whole white club night? And everyone's like, shut up. But why are you here? So I'm like, these dynamics, but like, sometimes like people, whiteness is so over consuming for people that sometimes I'm just sitting there like, it's just a lot, it plays so much into the mental health dynamics of this country because I'm like, how, as a black person, ethnic minority, are you supposed to exist? You're supposed to feel nourished and reach this self-actualization in a place that's constantly denying your right to exist, and you're constantly having to explain to people why you should be here, why you're present here. It's just like, I can't even reach step one. So self-actualization, like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. And they're like, oh, why are black people suffering from mental health? And I'm like, there's a lot of reasons. Like, just being here is a challenge, and belonging is the first step. And I can't feel belonging when you lot are deporting people that look like me. I could be deported next, or my mum could be deported next, or my auntie could be like my cousin, my whole family could be deported. How am I supposed to feel? I'm supposed to be here. Despite the amount of work that black people have contributed to this country, helping build up the NHS, having to build back your country after World War II. Our grandparents came and sacrificed for you and left our countries underdeveloped. Help you. It's like, where's the recognition? And then the compensation for the Windrush scandal isn't even being paid out to people who deserve it. So a lot of times I'm like people, the conversation about mental health and race and these racial disparities that we have cannot exist in a vacuum of what can we do for black people if you're not addressing the racism, the politics, the capitalism, the structural oppressions that black people have to deal with. If you're not about to deal with those, then we can't even begin to have a conversation about mental health or any of it. Because I'm like, it's just not like you can't deal with one issue in isolation. The whole thing.
It's just a lot, but it's just so nice to like hear your story and just know that it's not just me, because it's suffocating and it's exhausting, like always managing my thoughts. Like I'm literally so tired all of the time. Like I'm just so fatigued because I just have so many thoughts like whizzing through my brain, like my mental health, and then how I feel about living here, like living in this neighborhood, living in this country. Should I move? Where do I move to? What about my child? All of these things. And then trying to run a business, trying to start a new one, trying to get my money up, trying to start a new career, like too many things in my brain, like literally too many things in my brain. And I'm like, luckily I'm this version of me today, because old me would have like just completely crumbled because it's just too much. It's too much.
Absolutely. And it is tiring. And I think like one thing that I think has been nice starting the charity and everything is creating these spaces for people to share. Because I thought in the grand scheme of not belonging, entering a space where you hear people say things that you kind of can resonate with has kind of created sense of belonging in those spaces of community, like something you can turn to and be like, okay, well, I know that these people will share similar experiences, and I really do enjoy that. And I think for me, my charity doing that, I've kind of been very conscious about places that I want to work, the dynamics of places I want to work, what in creating a charity, what would I want for anybody who's coming to work in a charity to feel? Because I've been in workplaces where people are not so nice.
Yeah.
Let their biases come through and stereotypes about who you are as a person come through.
Yeah.
How can I create a workplace that doesn't tries to deal with those issues and does not perpetuate those problems? So
yeah,
that's nice. And thank you for sharing your story. Like, it's so nice to kind of talk to someone who has a similar parental structure.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like it must be so lovely for you and healing you to share as well.
Yeah, it's been really, really amazing. It's felt very freeing, just like a weight lifted off my shoulder. Like, it's just been really, really healing. And yeah, it's just been nice to hear your side of your story as well. And just to know it's not just me. I know it isn't just me, but I'm just always around people who just don't get it, and then I can't speak on it. So yeah, it's been very, very liberating. It's been really, really nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I can stop recording.
Thank you for listening to Thelma Matilda Alves Foundation podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to find out more about the charity and the work we do, you can visit our website, our Instagram, or our Twitter, where we have more information about upcoming sessions, workshops, volunteer opportunities, job opportunities, and the ways that you can collaborate with us. Again, thank you for listening, and we hope you listen to the next one.